We have a very patient gentleman online, and it takes a lot of patience, no doubt, to do what he has been doing and to take on what has been added to his growing portfolio of responsibilities in that epic move to fast-track Jamaica's economy. Jamaica's Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, has appointed Jamaican-Canadian business leader and philanthropist Michael Lee-Chin to chair the Economic Growth Council, EGC, that will advise the government of Jamaica on the adoption of a framework of growth initiatives designed to facilitate and catalyze economic growth. Mr. Lee-Chin is founder and chairman of Portland Holdings and majority shareholder in National Commercial Bank NCB Group, widely regarded as a visionary entrepreneur and one who has inspired many through his philanthropic initiatives. His latest appointment by the Prime Minister has earned Michael Lee-Chin the title of Jamaica's Growth Czar. Let's say hello and welcome to the Honorable Michael Lee-Chin, OJ. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Mr. Malcom. Good morning, Donette.
Good morning, Mike. How are you doing today?
I'm pumped.
Is that because you've been working out this morning?
I did work out this morning, but more importantly, I'm in Canada now.
Yes. Back
from Jamaica. I worked, I was sequestered actually for 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., meetings after meetings with stakeholder groups.
Wow. You've really been busy. Michael Lee-Chin, when you got the call to serve in this capacity, essentially as the growth czar, the man who's going to help us to do what we have been struggling to do over the years in Jamaica to grow the economy, what was that initial thought, initial emotion that ran through your veins as you got this call?
Firstly, it is an absolute honor. It's the high point of my life to be able to give back to a country that has made me the person I am. So I could not but help feel most humbled, and I could not, notwithstanding the enormity of the task, I could not say no.
Michael, tell us a little bit about your own story, which is so compelling. From Portland to Portland Holdings.
Well, I'm from Port Antonio. I was born in 1951, and my mom, she's an orphan. She doesn't like for me to say this, but she is. That's a fact. And she lived in Port Antonio. When she had me when she was 18. And when she had me, she was taken in by, she had no network, she had no family. She was taken in by the helpers of the supermarket, Sanghing, in Port Antonio. And for the first 7 months of my life, she was unemployed. So that's where I started. I went to Titchfield, went to Excelsior, and I graduated in 1969. And it's only on April the 27th when I was doing research as to what was happening in 1969, because that was when I graduated. And I was doing research for my inaugural speech, acceptance speech. I realized that when I left Excelsior in 1969, I was able to get a job at Alpart, the Alumina Partners of Jamaica. And the only reason I was able to get a job was because GDP growth in 1969 was 5.4%.
Wow.
The only reason I was able to keep my job as a lab technician at Alpart in that year was because in 1970, GDP growth was 11.84%.
Whoa.
So this generation of Jamaicans would not have realized. In fact, I didn't realize that we had GDP growth was
that high.
was that high in those years. So I thought, wow, how about the student who is graduating today? That student is coming into an economy that is stagnant.
Yes.
That student would not have had, the opportunity to get a job is non-existent. So, wow, how blessed I am to have come out of high school at a time when there was growth. Mm-hmm. So, I came to Canada after working 1 year and got into the mutual fund business. And I built an asset management company in Canada from scratch. At its peak, it had 15 billion Canadian dollars, and we're serving 1 million Canadians. Then I thought, there are some principles that I follow that lead me, and some 3 preconditions that have to be met before I get excited about any investment and its ability to create wealth would include the following. Number 1, there must be a difference between perception and reality. Number 2, there must be inefficiencies, because when there are inefficiencies, there are opportunities to create outsized wealth. And thirdly, there must be a lack of equity capital flowing into the region, the sector, or the industry. Jamaica, the Caribbean, meet all 3 criteria. So when the opportunity to buy the National Commercial Bank came up, it too met those 3 criteria. I jumped. And for those of us who don't know, in 2002, when we bought the National Commercial Bank, we bought it out of FinSac. It was on the decline. It had a 24% market share. Our main competitor then had a 54% market share. The bank has been turned around. Today it's Jamaica's largest bank. It has a 43% market share. Our next competitor has about a 37% market share, and we're the most profitable. So Jamaica has been a wonderful place for me to have invested in. I also was a co-founder with another Canadian entrepreneur, Mr. John Risley, in Columbus Communications, which most of you know as Flow.
That's right.
And Flow was sold to Cable and Wireless, and Cable and Wireless was recently bought out by Liberty Global. So what has happened, what Flow did actually was to have brought telecommunications costs down by 90%, enabling the BPO industry in the Caribbean and Jamaica. So that's a brief synopsis.
Wow.
And Michael, you know, as the sitting economic growth czar, and this is precedent setting as we had talked about earlier on. I mean, there's nowhere else in the world that has engaged, attempted to engage everyone, all the stakeholders in this way. What are you, in order to achieve the 5%, what are you saying to Jamaica and Jamaicans?
Well, firstly, I'm saying we have to recognize why we are where we are today. That's the first thing. We have to recognize it, acknowledge it, and make sure we don't commit the same mistakes. So I'm going to list some of the reasons why we are in this situation of stagnation. Firstly, there has never been before a focus on a particular goal, a clearly defined goal. Now we have 5% GDP growth at the end of 4 years. That's coming from over the last 10 years, since independence, our GDP growth has averaged less than 1.5%. Over the last 20 years, less than 0.5%. Over the last 10 years, less than 0.198%. So you can see it has been a decline since independence.
Yes.
So the goal of the EGC is to avert that trajectory, turn it around, and at the end of 4 years, have 5%, which is 25 times what we have averaged over the last 10 years. So the goal is clear. And you see, if you don't have a goal, you'll not have a plan. If you don't have a plan, there's no accountability, and you can miss milestones without any consequence. This goal is clear. We therefore have to meet milestones and hence that's the reason why we will achieve it. Second reason why, and I regard these reasons as frictions. Second reason would be political tribalism. That has hindered growth in Jamaica. Third reason, lack of leadership with respect to a focus on growth. Fourth reason, we have been distracted by fiscal mismanagement. Fifth reason, crime. Sixth reason, it's very difficult to do business in Jamaica. Seventh reason, we have had poor capital allocation of our financial assets. Eighth reason, we have had a high cost of capital in Jamaica. Ninth reason, high cost of energy. 10th reason, high cost of telecom before Columbus. 11th reason, unproductive labor force. 12th reason, no confidence by us Jamaicans. 13th reason, corruption. 14th reason, sabotage. 15th reason, low standards of expectations of ourselves and country. And 16th reason, low savings rate. So those are some of the reasons, the retardants to growth that we have had, and it became, because we've had them for such a long time, we became desensitized to them.
Michael, that sounds like such a daunting task. It sounds like you're going to spend. This is the project, your epic project. And how are you engaging the stakeholders? I know you've been meeting with a lot of them.
Well, firstly, the stage is set, Dervan, Donette, in that at no point in history before now have we come to this situation whereby we are all mad as hell and we want change. We have had, over the last 4 years, an improving fiscal house. We're coming from one that was in shambles, and the previous administration has done a good job at setting the house on a good trajectory. We have today low energy price. So before we complained that our manufacturers were not competitive because of high energy costs, we have today the table is set because we have today low telecom price. We're attractive to the BPO industry. We have an increase in confidence. And we have the support from our multilateral partners. And we have a government today that has acknowledged that, look, the role of government is to enable and facilitate, and the role of business is to get growth. So the table is set. So my initial task is to meet with all the stakeholder representatives in Jamaica, which I started this past Wednesday. So we met this Wednesday with over the last 3 days with the Small Business Association of Jamaica, the planning agency of Jamaica, the PSOJ, private sector, corporate PSOJ, private sector of Jamaica, etc., etc. And the agencies, this is a big one, the agencies representing the 13 agencies that you have to get approval from if you have a development project. And that was a meeting that if we can get the agencies to work together, then it will be, we will be able to deliver a project in the 90 days that is set, versus in some cases it takes years to get projects through. And for the first time we had a meeting of these different agents who have been working in silos, and we had a breakthrough because they have now committed to work together to make sure that yes, 90 days mean 90 days, and we have to do this now for Jamaica. So we have been meeting with the stakeholders, and my job is to enable the stakeholders, the agencies, the private sector, to do what they have to do, to enable them in the case of the government ministries, agencies and departments, to enable them to be the best professional that they can be.
Michael, I must tell you that we're getting a lot of, on social media, people listening in, and I know Dervan wanted to share some of this because you're now firing up Jamaicans all over the world.
In fact, Beverline in Canada says, "Hey Dervan, I'm proud. Finally you bring on Mr. Chin, one of the greatest. Thank you." Sir Chin is so right. How can you build a country when there's so much corruption, sabotaging, most of all, bad-minded people and folks who want what others have, but to steal, rob, and kill? So he makes you feel so energized, and that's reference to you, Mr. Lee-Chin. And then we also have Vivette Malcom, who's listening in. She says, very interesting program as usual. And then on Facebook, Samantha Mafood is listening, and she says, she's asking, what 3 things can businesses, government, individuals do to grow the Jamaican economy?
Over to you, Mike.
What 3 things? Number 1, firstly, we all have to have confidence. Because if we have confidence that we can scale Mount Everest, the attitude will be, bring it on. If we have no confidence, we're going to say, oh my gosh, Mount Everest, oh my gosh, how can I do that? Right? So if we have confidence, our behavior is one way. If we have no confidence, our behavior is another way. Now, I have always believed that we should lead by example. In terms of investing, I have made big investments in Jamaica. But you should remember that my job, I'm an investor. I invest all over the world. I invest in the United States, I invest in Great Britain, I invest in Europe. And I say to the diaspora that of all the investments that I've made, the one that has paid the most dividend are my investments in Jamaica. Because not only am I helping to grow the society, but we are actually, the investments are doing good. So I would implore Jamaicans, the first thing we can do if we are really serious about turning around our country is to have confidence that great things are going to happen. Don't look at what has happened in the past. Realize that it's different today. The table is set.
Indeed it is, Michael Lee-Chin. We need to take a break. This has been engaging stuff. We're going to come back in just a moment. You're listening to the Jamaican Diaspora live online on Power 106. Thank you so much for staying with us here on the Jamaican Diaspora live online, Power 106 FM. Still streaming live on the Gleaners website, go-jamaica.com. The Honorable Michael Lee-Chin is online. He has been sharing with us his vision and his mission as Jamaica's first ever economic growth czar. And he was responding to a question before the break from Samantha Mafood, asking what 3 things can businesses, government, individuals do to grow the Jamaican economy. And confidence, of course, number 1 on the list. Mr. Lee-Chin said. He also talked about leading by example. Yes?
Michael, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
So take us to the third one.
The second would be, I was talking to a friend of mine, Jimmy Moss Solomon, last week, and Jimmy said, Mike, you know, you have made an objective to get 5% GDP growth at the end of 4 years. You know, we could get 10% GDP growth immediately. I said, how, Jimmy? He said, if every Jamaican worker came to work on time.
Actually, interestingly enough, Douglas O'Rain mentioned that yesterday as well.
So, you know, we are on, one of the 16 retardants to growth I mentioned was that we are an unproductive workforce in Jamaica. So if we could all realize that our unproductivity has an impact on future generations, and this is the reason why we're here today. So we just have to all reaffirm, if we are really serious about building a better Jamaica, that recognize that we're in a competitive global environment, workplace, and we have to do our part. When we get up in the mornings, We have to go to work on time, put in a full day's work, and increase productivity. And secondly, when we see corruption, right, we should whistleblow. We should not just accept it because it's wrong.
Yes. And we're getting a lot of feedback, as we've been saying, Mr. Lee-Chin, but the business of time, and that has to be a national campaign, a campaign for Jamaica to be on time, because Jamaica time is no longer on time. Jamaica time, in fact, is not on time. And these days, I'm sure you'll tell us, Mr. Lee-Chin, being on time is not good enough. Being ahead of time is where the world is now. Monica says on Facebook, Mr. Lee-Chin, Dervan, I'm ever so pleased that Mr. Lee-Chin came on today to speak to us of his intention for Jamaica. Having Mr. Chin on board is like a person drowning and a rope sent out to save them. Thanks to the PM for his great pick of the bunch. And Angela Christian has an idea. She says, is there a possibility to set up a voluntary project, work training for single mothers, young men 15 to 25, with a benefit of 6,000 Jamaican dollars weekly? If they stay in work training, CV getting company to employ them, could raise tax on cigarette and alcohol for this project with a loan to start it. So people are bubbling with ideas, Michael Lee-Chin, and just anxious that you should hear some of these ideas, which helps that you've been meeting with the various stakeholder groups, as we've discussed already.
Right, and obviously your passion is infectious. Michael, how can we in the diaspora participate? Because a lot of these messages are coming out of the diaspora as well.
Well, if you want to increase speed, there are two things you have to do. Number one, you have to reduce friction. I itemized 16 identified retardants growth earlier in the program. Let us now talk about, and so we have to deal with those retardants, the friction. Secondly, we have to identify, if we're going to achieve a 5% GDP growth at the end of 5 years, we have to identify horsepower. So you want to increase speed, you reduce friction, and increase horsepower. So let's talk about horsepower. We have to increase the remittances by 20%. So I'll name them first, and then I'm just go through how we're going to do it. Secondly, we have to get our mining sector back to capacity. We have to increase production from our mining sector by 20%. We have to increase the agricultural sector, the take from agriculture, by 20%, and we have to increase the take from tourism by 20%. Let me just focus on the diaspora for 2 seconds. It is not reasonable to go to the diaspora community and say, look, send 20% more to granny or aunt or baby at home. But what would not be unreasonable is to say to diaspora, look, diaspora. In fact, I'll just give you an experience I had, which will underscore the point. 10 years ago, I was being honored by the Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem. And the Reverend Calvin Butts at the presentation said to the audience, did you realize that over the last 50 years, there is only one high school built in Harlem? I was shocked. He said it was not built by the federal government. It was not built by the state government nor the city government. It was built by the Abyssinian Baptist Church. And we have been working very diligently to gentrify Harlem. And now that Harlem is being gentrified, our native population, because Harlem has such a fantastic location, it's in the middle of Manhattan and it abuts Central Park. And now that Harlem is being gentrified, the natives are being displaced because real estate value has gone up 10 times in the last 10 years, and the natives were not traditional homeowners or landowners in Harlem. So they're being displaced. So I thought, oh my gosh, we're working hard to gentrify Jamaica. And if we are successful, which we will be successful, the natives of Jamaica will be displaced because they're not traditional homeowners, landowners, etc. So I have to go back to Jamaica and say, look, own a piece of the rock. Because if not, once gentrification comes, and it is happening, you will not be able to afford it. So I'll say to the diaspora, look, we don't expect for you to send 20% more to Jamaica to support granny or auntie. But why wouldn't you consider taking 20% of your long-term savings and put it into Jamaica? And we'll provide vehicles like infrastructure. So you'll be able to invest in energy power generation. You'll be able to invest in toll roads, infrastructure, quality assets, that your retirement will be very safe, and you'll be able to do better than you could do by investing in stocks in England or the United States or Canada. So I will go on a road show, speak to the diaspora directly, tell them what's happening in Jamaica, and encourage them to take some of their long-term savings, put it into Jamaica.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, sounds like a road show that Power 106 FM will be on, because we have our own series of shows from time to time going across the diaspora. And this is Jamaica's #1 diaspora radio station, so we look forward to supporting those efforts at getting the word out and reaching the diaspora.
And Michael, just before we let you go, what kind of words of wisdom do you leave with the young?
With the young, I would say, I heard another statistic which was appalling. 80% of our graduates from university, Jamaica. 80%. And you can understand why. Because, as I said earlier, we are graduating our students into stagnancy. So I would say to the young, those who are outside of Jamaica, look to Jamaica, because opportunities will be presented to you in Jamaica, or we are resolute that we're going to get jobs. We're going to get jobs by our efforts. It will take us a while, but don't despair.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. Words of wisdom from the Honorable Michael Lee-Chin, OJ. Michael, thank you so much for taking time to be on Power 106.
Yes, and just to go out with some more feedback, this lady says, I will be retiring soon and feel that I still have much to contribute to my society. This is Sonia on Facebook. I think the government, Mr. Lee-Chin and his team, need to look at how the young retirees can be utilized to help our country grow. I am listening. Hugh on Facebook says, how does the role of entrepreneurship and developing those skills play a role in your plans? And there are others coming in. As we said, the feedback has been overwhelming. We perhaps at some point could forward some of these responses to you, Mr. Lee-Chin. Look at here. More coming in. Albert in Florida. Coconut Creek says, the initiative by the government is for us the most innovative in a long time. Listening to Mr. Michael Lee-Chin on the 16 pillars of impediments in the country is bold. Somehow our people have lost the desire to work or even to seek employment. If Mr. Chin can mobilize us to pull up our bootstraps and start walking beyond the sky is the limit. The IMF gave the government's growth initiatives the thumbs up. Most importantly, they mentioned they're asking for that 3 years. Now with Mr. Chin, I see the growth coming. Bold move. Albert in Coconut Creek, Florida. Thank you once again. You've heard the responses. I'm sure you're even more emboldened and energized and ready to lead us in this regard. Thank you so much, Mr. Lee-Chin, and all the very best to you and the team and all of us who will be playing our part in growing this economy.
Thank you very much, Dervan. Thank you very much, Donette.
Thank you.
Thank you. All the best. The Honorable Michael Lee-Chin, OJ, Jamaica's first economic growth czar.